The distress signal went out on all frequencies at 0300 ship time, when the time's unbroken chorus times had already been dead in the water for 6 hours, and Admiral Suna had already done the math 3 times and gotten the same answer each time. The answer was not good. The Cauldron Nebula was not a place ships went to survive. It was a place ships went when someone wanted them to disappear quietly, surrounded by enough interference static that the rest of the galaxy could tell itself it hadn't heard anything. The Dravosi knew this. They had picked the location with the calm, organized patience of a species that had been ending other species for 400 years and had developed a kind of professionalism about it. Their ships circled the times. Unbroken chorus, times the way water circles a drain. No firing. No posturing. Just presence. 47 vessels, arranged in a formation that said, times, we have done this before, and we know how it ends. Times, without a single weapon being raised. Suna stood on the bridge of her dying ship and watched them circle, and felt, more than anything else, embarrassed, not afraid. She had been a Kethera admiral for 60 years. Fear was a thing she had metabolized into something quieter, something that lived at the back of her chest and kept her sharp without making her stupid. What she felt now was embarrassment, the specific, cold kind that comes from having believed in something that turned out to be a formality. The Galactic Accord's Mutual Defense Clause had 12 paragraphs and 41 signatories. She had read it 3 times before this deployment, and found it, on each reading, reassuring. She understood now that she had been reading a decoration, not a promise. The distress signal continued broadcasting. Vessel tender Yirith monitored the responses from the communications console, his young face doing the thing young faces do when they are trying very hard not to show that they are receiving terrible news. 39 responses, Admiral, he said. Condolences. And the others? He was quiet for a moment. 3 have forwarded the signal to their legal divisions. He paused again. For review. Suna said nothing. She turned back to the viewport and looked at the Dravosi ships and thought about the 41 signatories and what 41 meant when you subtracted 39 condolences and 3 lawyers. The math was not complicated. Yirith cleared his throat carefully. There is one civilization that has not responded at all. I know. Should I resend to their frequency? It is possible the signal. They received it. She said it flatly. Not unkindly. They have the best signal interception arrays in the Accord. If we broadcast it, they heard it in the first 4 seconds. Yirith processed this. He was young enough that the silence still bothered him, young enough to believe that silence was something that needed to be filled. Who are they? He asked. The ones who haven't responded. Suna watched a Dravosi patrol vessel complete its arc and fold back into formation, smooth and certain as a closing hand. Humans, she said. The word sat in the air between them. Yirith turned it over in whatever way his species turned unfamiliar things over. I have not encountered them, he said. In any of my briefings. Most briefings leave them out. She moved away from the viewport and walked to the central display, where the damage reports scrolled in quiet columns. Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. Navigation array destroyed. 3 crew dead in the initial Dravosi strike. The one that had been less an attack and more an announcement times. We can do this whenever we choose, and we are choosing now to demonstrate that. They are a small species, young. Their fleet is modest by any standard the Accord uses to measure these things. Then why mention them? She looked at the damage columns without reading them. She had already read them. She knew every number. Because, she said, they are a species that makes promises they have no business keeping. Yirith waited, and then keeps them anyway. She said it like a warning. It arrived in the room like an eulogy for something not yet dead. The Dravosi flagship opened a channel at 0400. It was not an attack channel. It was a diplomatic channel, which was somehow worse. It meant they were not even troubled enough to be hostile. The prefect admiral who appeared on the display was older than his rank suggested, with the careful, well-rested face of someone who had scheduled enough endings to have lost the drama of them. He wore his uniform the way furniture wears polish. He looked at Suna the way a contractor looks at a wall he has been hired to remove. "Admiral Suna," he said. His voice was pleasant. "I want to first express the Dravosi hierarchy's regret for the circumstances that have led us here." "Do you?" she said. "We are not unreasonable people." He folded his hands on the desk in front of him. Behind him, his bridge crew moved with the practiced, unhurried efficiency of people who knew the outcome. "We have reviewed your ship's condition. We understand that extended resistance is not a realistic option for your crew, and we have no interest in unnecessary suffering." A pause. Clean and professional. "We are prepared to offer full surrender protocols. Your crew's safety will be guaranteed under hierarchy processing standards, which I am sure you are aware comply with." "How long?" Suna said. He blinked once. It was the first unscripted thing he had done. "I beg your pardon? How long are you giving us?" Not a question. A calculation being run out loud. He recovered smoothly. 6 rotations. "We feel this is generous. Given the..." She cut the channel. Not in anger. In arithmetic. She turned back to her bridge and looked at the crew. 14 of them left, watching her with the particular stillness of people who are waiting to be told something true. And she thought about 6 rotations, and the distance from here to the nearest Kethara fleet. And then she thought about all the other distances, the ones measured not in space but in commitment, in intention, in the willingness to move when a signal is received. She thought about 41 signatories. She thought about 39 condolences and 3 lawyers and 1 silence. She went to her console and pulled up the silence. Looked at it. The human frequency, sitting there open and empty and not responding, like a room that someone had just left. Yirith watched her from across the bridge. He wanted to ask something. She could see it in the way he held himself, the question pressing up against his professionalism. She answered it before he could ask. "The Dravosi have given us 6 rotations," she said. "They are very confident." She closed the human frequency, pulled up the damage reports again, and began reading them for the 4th time, because there was always a chance she had missed something. People who schedule other people's deaths far enough in advance always are. The time's unbroken chorus times drifted. The Dravosi fleet circled. The nebula pulsed with old light from dead stars. The human frequency stayed silent. Outside, in the slow dark of the Cauldron Nebula, 43 civilizations had received a distress signal. 39 had sent condolences. 3 had sent lawyers. 1 had sent nothing at all. And 6 rotations is a very specific amount of time. It is long enough to feel like mercy. It is short enough to make hope stupid. Suna read the damage reports and did not hope. She had never found hope to be a particularly useful instrument. The coffee on the Times permanent reminder times was bad because nobody had remembered to requisition the good stuff before they left Callaway Station. And they had left Callaway Station in a hurry, and Captain Dara Ose had been drinking bad coffee for 3 days now, with the steady, resentful commitment of a woman who needed the caffeine more than she needed to enjoy it. She stood at the navigation console and drank it, and read the Kethara distress signal for the 6th time. The first time she had read it, she felt the thing in her chest that she had felt for 37 years, whenever a distress signal came in a tightening, a rearrangement, like her internal organs were moving to make room for a decision. The second time, she started doing distances in her head. By the 6th time, she was just confirming numbers she already had. 4 rotations out, if the drives were pushed past comfortable, past the range that Chief Engineer Halverson had circled on the maintenance schedule in red ink and labeled "Do Not" in capital letters, with what appeared to be genuine feeling. She finished the coffee, set the cup down on the console, carefully. "Ose." Fleet Command's voice came through the comm in the flat, pressed tone of someone who had been told to make a call they disagreed with. "We need to confirm your receipt of the stand-down order." "Received," she said. And I received it. Yes." She looked at the distress signal, then at the distance calculation, then at the bad coffee cup. "Thank you for confirming the confirmation." A pause. "Dara." The voice shifted, became human, became the voice of someone who actually knew her. The Accord flagged this as a non-human theater. Kethara Dravosi conflict. "We are legally. I know what we are legally. Then you know I can't authorize. I know that too. She turned away from the console and looked out through the viewport at the nothing between her and the Cauldron Nebula, the vast and unhelpful nothing. I'm not asking for authorization. The comm went quiet in the specific way it goes quiet when someone is deciding whether to say the thing they're thinking. She waited. The Times Permanent Reminder Times is a heavy destroyer, the voice said finally. Not a flagship. It is not designed to engage a full Dravosi siege fleet. No, she agreed. It isn't. Another pause. What are you going to do? She was already walking toward the engine room. Have a conversation, she said, and cut the channel. The Times, Permanent Reminder Times, was not a beautiful ship. It was a 30-year-old heavy destroyer that had been repaired so many times in so many places by so many different hands that its hull had developed a kind of personality, patches of different metals, different ages, different histories, all welded together into something that worked because it refused to do otherwise. Fleet Command had recommended decommissioning it twice in the last 5 years. Osei had filed the counter-paperwork both times, with the calm efficiency of a woman who did not consider the recommendation to be serious. She found Halverson in the engine room, lying on her back underneath the secondary drive housing with her arms inside the machine up to the elbows, having what appeared to be a personal argument with a coolant coupling. I need full drives, Osei said. Halverson did not come out from under the housing. No, past the red circle. The sound that came from under the housing was not a word. It was a feeling, expressed through volume. There's a ship dying in the Cauldron Nebula, Osei said. 4 rotations out at comfortable speed, 3 at uncomfortable. She crouched down so she could see Halverson's face, which was covered in grease and expressing a full paragraph of objection. How fast can you get me there? Halverson stared at the ceiling of the housing for a long moment. You're doing this, she said. It was not a question. Yes. Fleet Command has my forwarding address. Halverson made the sound again. Then she started moving inside the housing with a different kind of energy. Not the energy of a woman fixing a machine, but the energy of a woman deciding what she was willing to do for a captain she had followed into 4 engagements, and would, apparently, follow into a 5th one that was arguably worse than all of them combined. 2.5 rotations, she said. But I need you to not come down here and look at anything while I'm doing it. What you don't see, you can't stop me from. Done. Osei stood. Thank you. Don't thank me. Bring me back. She gathered her senior crew in the main briefing room, 20 minutes later. 8 people around a table that had been there longer than most of them had been alive. She did not stand at the head of it. She sat, the way she always sat, at the side, like she was part of the conversation rather than in charge of it. She told them where they were going and why. She did not give a speech. She did not use words like times, honor times, or times duty times, or times courage. Because she had never found those words to be load-bearing, they sounded significant right up until the moment something was actually required of you, and then they were just sounds. She told them the facts. The Times Unbroken Chorus. Position, condition, crew count. The Dravosi fleet. Size, configuration, the tactical pattern she had spent 2 days studying because she had studied every Dravosi tactical pattern ever recorded. Because that was the kind of thing she did on long deployments, when the coffee was bad, and sleep seemed like a waste of operational hours. They have a pattern, she said. She pulled up the display siege formation, the circle of 47 ships. They have used this formation in every engagement for 30 years. The perimeter is designed to prevent FTL escape, which means every ship in the formation is positioned outward. She looked around the table. Not inward. The weapons chief, a broad man named Ikenna, who had been with her for 9 years, and who hummed gospel music while he armed ordnance in a way that everyone had learned to find comforting rather than unsettling. He stopped humming. He leaned forward. He looked at the formation. He understood what she was not saying. We go in from inside, he said. Nobody does that, said the navigator, Ensign Priya Talon, who had been on the Times Permanent Reminder Times for 4 months and had not been in a real fight, and was, at this moment, trying very hard to hold her face in a shape that did not reveal this. FTL, inside a perimeter, is the calculations alone. Are hard, Osei agreed. Halverson is working on them. Halverson said she'd never do that. Halverson says a lot of things. Osei looked at Talon, not in challenge. More the way a person looks when they are giving someone the chance to decide who they are. Can you plot it? Talon was quiet for 4 seconds. Then, yes. Good. She went through the rest of the briefing in the same flat. Specific way, this is what we are doing. This is what it will cost. This is what each of you needs to do, and when. She did not soften any of it. She had always believed that soft information made hard situations harder, that the kindest thing she could do for her crew was tell them exactly what was true and trust them to stand up to it. After, she went back to the communications bay alone. She pulled up the Cathara signal log and scrolled through the responses. All 43. She read every one. The condolences, carefully worded. The legal referrals. The silence. Her face did nothing for a long time. Then she pulled up a second channel, a civilian relief frequency, routed to the nearest human medical station, 40 minutes from her current position. She sent a short message. 4 lines. No preamble. She set the coffee down, picked up the comm. Halverson, I need those drives. From somewhere deep in the ship, through 2 bulkheads and a maintenance corridor, Halverson's voice came back. I times heard times that. Good. The times permanent reminder times turned. Its engines lit. Halverson, in the engine room, began humming something low and old and serious, and the ship moved toward the Cauldron Nebula at a speed that the maintenance schedule had specifically and clearly told it not to. The Dravosi Prefect Admiral was reviewing the surrender documentation when his tactical display went wrong. Not wrong in a way that meant malfunction. Wrong in a way that meant something had just happened that the display did not have a category for. The FTL emergence signature appeared inside the perimeter. Not at the edge. Not at the approach corridor. Inside, deep inside. Inside the kill zone. Inside the space that existed between the time's unbroken chorus times and the innermost ring of Dravosi vessels. A space that was not supposed to be accessible from FTL, because the mathematics of FTL emergence inside an active perimeter were genuinely dangerous, and no rational commander would. He stood up. The bridge around him went very quiet. On the display, the emerged ship held its position. Weapons systems active. Shields at full. It sat there, in the middle of his formation, like a stone dropped into still water, and the ripples moving outward from it were the signals of 47 Dravosi vessels, suddenly turning their targeting arrays inward for the first time in 30 years of running this formation. His senior tactical officer said something. He did not hear it. He was looking at the ship class. A human heavy destroyer. 1 ship. 1 ship. He sat back down slowly. He pressed his hands flat against the desk in front of him, which was something he had not done since his first command, when he was young enough to need the physical steadiness. He breathed. He considered the shape of what was happening with the calm, orderly mind that had gotten him to Prefect Admiral and had, until this moment, never encountered a situation it could not file. He could not file this. On the time's unbroken chorus, Yereth saw the emergent signature before his console finished parsing it. The readings made no sense. He ran them twice and then turned to the Admiral's chair and opened his mouth. Suna was already looking at the display. She had gone very still. The kind of still that is not the absence of motion but the presence of something large and quiet moving through a person all at once. Admiral, Yereth said carefully. That emergence point. I know. That is not possible. The calculations. 4. I know what the calculations are. Her eyes were still on the display. The single human ship sitting in the middle of the Dravosi formation. Weapons hot, shields bright. Alone in a way that should have looked desperate and instead looked something else entirely. Their engineer is remarkable, she said. It came out sounding like something between admiration and a prayer. Osei's bridge was loud for exactly 4 seconds after the jump. Halverson's voice through the internal comm. We're in one piece. Confirmed, said Talon. And her voice was steady in the way that things are steady when someone has spent the last 2 hours being so frightened that fear has passed through them and come out the other side as something functional. She was reading her instruments with both hands moving and her eyes sharp. She had plotted the jump. She had done it. Whatever she was now, she was not the same ensign who had sat at that briefing table 4 months into her first posting. Osei looked at the display. 47 ships. Every single one now facing her. She had expected this. She had calculated for this. She looked at the numbers and found them close enough to her projections to proceed. "Open a channel to the Dravosi flagship," she said. "Command frequency." Her comms officer, a thin young man named Sasha who had the extremely specific skill of appearing unruffled at moments that were deeply ruffling, looked up. "Their command frequency?" "Yes. That's..." He stopped. "Open the channel." "Done." She stood up. She had thought about what to say during the 2.5 rotations of travel. She had written nothing down. She did not work from notes in these situations. She had found, over 37 years, that the thing you prepared to say and the thing that actually needed to be said were usually different things, and the gap between them was where mistakes lived. "Prefect Admiral," she said, in Dravosi formal register, not trade common, not the diplomatic pidgin that everyone used in accord conversations, but the actual interior formal language of the Dravosi command structure, the one that was not taught in standard briefings, and that she had spent 11 months learning during a posting that most people in Fleet Command thought had been a waste of time. The Prefect Admiral took 11 seconds to respond. She counted. 11 seconds is, for a Dravosi commander, a very long time. "Captain." His voice was careful in a new way. Not the careful of a man who is managing a conversation, but the careful of a man who is reassessing one. "You are in an unauthorized position. I am in your perimeter." "Yes," she agreed. "I want to express my regret for the interruption to your operation." She kept her voice level. Pleasant, even. The pleasantness was not performance, it was the genuine, practiced calm of a woman who had learned that the most unnerving thing you could do in a standoff was be reasonable. "I am requesting that you reconsider your timeline regarding the time's unbroken chorus." A pause. "Requesting." "Yes." The pause stretched. She imagined him looking at his tactical display, at one human heavy destroyer sitting inside his formation with its weapons charged, using the word times, requesting times with what had to register, to any experienced commander, as a profound and unsettling confidence. "You understand," he said slowly, "that you are one vessel." "I do." "Surrounded by 47 Dravosi warships." "Yes, I counted them on the way in." She looked at Ikenna, who had stopped humming. He was watching her. His hands were on his console. "I want to be transparent with you, Prefect Admiral, because I think transparency serves both of us better here. My ship is not going to be easy to remove from this position. We came in through your formation, rather than at it, which means the firing solutions your ships currently have will involve significant crossfire risk." She let that sit for a moment. "I am not a threat to you. I am a complication, and complications have a cost." Another pause. "Longer. What is it you want, Captain?" "The Time's unbroken chorus times is a diplomatic vessel. Its crew has done nothing to the Dravosi hierarchy that justifies their current situation." She kept her voice even, kept it light, kept it the voice of someone describing something obvious that she was somehow being patient enough to explain. "I want them to leave this nebula alive." The Prefect Admiral was quiet for a long time, long enough that Talon glanced at Osei from the navigator's console, and Osei gave her nothing back, just stood, waiting, with the posture of a woman who had decided how this ended, and was giving the other party the time to arrive at the same conclusion. Then the Dravosi.com clicked. Closed. Internal channel, his bridge. She could not hear it. She did not need to. She watched her tactical display, and read what was happening in the movement of the Dravosi ships. Small adjustments, the micro-shifts of a formation reconfiguring, captains receiving new orders, or requesting clarification, or pushing back against an instruction that didn't match their briefing. "He's going to call the bluff," Ikenna said. His voice was quiet. "No him in it now." She looked at her weapons chief. He was watching the display with the eyes of a man who had been in enough fights to recognize the moment before one. "Yes," she said. She had known this was possible. She had planned for this too. "Warm everything up," she said. All of it. Ikena's hands moved. The time's permanent reminder times lit up on every Dravosi display in the formation at the same time. Every system, every weapon, everything it had, everything it was, all of it active at once, broadcasting its full capability into the dark, the way a creature will show its teeth not to attack, but to be honest about what it is. The Dravosi flagship's weapons array turned to face her directly. 47 ships, all facing in. One ship, facing all of them. The nebula pulsed old light around all of them, and didn't care about any of it. Osei stood at the center of her bridge, and waited to find out which version of this she was in. The first shot came from the Dravosi left flank, not the flagship, which told Osei something about the prefect admiral, that he had not ordered it, that somewhere in his formation, a captain had made a personal decision, and that decision was now everyone's problem. It clipped the time's permanent reminder, sport shield array. Not a killing blow, a testing one. Osei sat down. Ikena, she said. Already on it. His voice was flat and focused, and the hymn was completely gone now, replaced by the specific human sound of a person doing the thing they are genuinely best at. What followed was not a battle in any sense that matched the word's drama. It was a problem. A very loud, very dangerous problem that needed to be solved in real time using tools that were already under stress. And Osei worked it the way she worked all problems methodically, with the kind of focus that shuts out everything that isn't useful and keeps everything that is. The time's permanent reminder times did not fight the way Dravosi ships fought. Dravosi combat doctrine was built on formation and coordination ships, moving together, covering angles, sharing targeting data across the fleet like a single organism. It was extremely effective against enemies who fought the same way. Against an enemy inside the formation, moving in ways that the tactical models had not projected, it was something else. Targeting solutions updated, and were already wrong by the time they updated. Crossfire risk kept ships from committing to full salvos. The formation, designed to prevent escape, had become a crowd. 47 ships unable to fire freely at a single target without the risk of hitting each other. Osei had read every Dravosi engagement record available to the Accord. She had spent 11 months understanding how they thought. She knew this would happen. She moved her ship through the spaces that the formation created. Not trying to win she had never thought she could win. Not against 47 ships. Not with one destroyer but trying to be expensive. Every minute that the time's permanent reminder time stayed alive and moving cost the Dravosi formation something. Coordination, ammunition, the clean execution of a plan that was supposed to have been simple. Hull breach on deck 4, Halverson said through the comm. She was still in the engine room. She had been in the engine room the entire time, which was both her job and the right place for her, because if the engines stopped, nothing else mattered. Her voice giving damage reports had the particular quality of a doctor listing symptoms she was already treating flat and fast, and without the wasted energy of panic. Sealing it. We're losing pressure in the secondary corridor. I'm rerouting. How are the drives? Running. Don't ask me how. I'm asking. Spite, Halverson said. The drives are running on spite. Don't look at them. On the time's unbroken chorus? Suna watched the battle with her hands behind her back and did not speak for a long time. Yirith watched the display beside her, trying to understand what he was seeing, because what he was seeing did not follow any combat model he had studied. The human ship moved like it was improvising, like it was making decisions in the middle of making other decisions, adjusting and reacting and responding in a way that was almost biological, not the clean mathematics of fleet combat, but something messier and harder to predict. How are they doing that? He asked. Suna was quiet for a moment. Human combat doctrine is not standardized, she said. Their military has a tradition old, goes back to their earliest conflicts of allowing individual unit commanders significant discretion in engagement decisions. Most militaries move away from this as they develop. Humans did not. She watched a Dravosi broadside pass through the space where the times, permanent reminder times, had been a half-second before. They call it adaptability. Dravosi tacticians have called it disorganization. The difference between those two words is what you are watching. Yirith watched the human ship take a hit, amidships a real one this time. the kind that lit up his damage assessment readouts with urgent colors. The ship shuddered on the display, kept moving. "They are going to lose," he said. "Not cruelly. Mathematically. Probably," Suna said. "That is not what they are trying to do." He looked at her. "Then what are they trying to do?" She turned away from the display and looked at the far wall of the bridge for a moment. The wall with the hull breach patch on it, still holding, the edges of it not quite the same color as the original plating. "They are trying to make it cost more to continue than to stop," she said. "They are trying to make the Dravosi Prefect Admiral look at his formation, at the coordination failures, the ammunition expenditure, the time cost, the crossfire incidents, the report he will have to file, explaining how one human destroyer was inside his perimeter at all, and decide that the times, unbroken chorus times, is not worth it." Urith looked back at the display. "Is it working?" She turned back, watched. "Ask me in 10 minutes. In the engine room of the Times Permanent Reminder, Halverson was having a conversation with the ship that no one else could hear, not words exactly, but the kind of communication that happens between a person and a machine they have spent years with, a language of sounds and vibrations, and the specific way a drive shudders when it is being pushed past its design parameters, but hasn't given up yet. She had her hands on the housing, and she could feel the engines through her palms, and she was giving them everything she had not technically, she was past technical. She was into the category of engineering that runs on understanding a machine the way you understand a person, on knowing what it will do when you ask for more than it should give. "Come on," she said. "To the ship, to the drives, to the long, strange fact of being here at all. Come on." The drives held. Osei was watching the Dravosi formation when she saw it. The subtle shift, the micro-reconfiguration that a less experienced eye would have missed. Ships adjusting. Not to attack, to accommodate. The formation was developing hesitation in the way that formations do, when the people inside them are waiting for an order that hasn't come, when the expected clean resolution has turned into something else, something that is generating questions instead of answers. The Prefect Admiral was still deciding. She checked her read on the medical relief frequency. The response she had sent 2.5 rotations ago, the 4-line message to the civilian relief station. The reply had come in 20 minutes after she sent it. She had not told her crew. She had wanted to wait until she knew it was needed. It was needed now. "Sasha," she said. "Open a channel on civilian relief frequency 7. Broadcast to the whole area. All ships." He looked at her, did not ask. Opened it. She did not speak on the channel. She just opened it. And on the open channel, the ship that she had messaged 2.5 rotations ago identified itself HSV times consideration. A human medical frigate, unarmed, civilian crewed, currently arriving at the outer edge of the Cauldron Nebula on a standard humanitarian assessment route that had, through a very specific sequence of fortunate timing, brought it directly here. Osei watched her tactical display. She watched the Dravosi ships see the medical frigate. She watched the Prefect Admiral understand what he was looking at, not a military escalation, not a second warship, but a Times medical ship, an unarmed civilian vessel coming in behind the first one, as if the response to a distress signal was not one impulsive captain, but a system, a structure, a commitment that had already dispatched multiple vessels before the outcome was known. The Prefect Admiral was doing math. She knew the math he was doing. She had done it herself. The math of what this engagement would look like in the Accord's records. A Dravosi siege fleet that had been held off by one human destroyer and a medical ship, in a nebula, in a conflict that had started as a routine foreclosure on a diplomatic vessel that nobody was supposed to care about. The math was not good for him. The Dravosi flagship stopped firing. A beat. Then the left flank. Then the right. One by one, across the formation, the weapons signatures quieted on her display, like lights going out in a building at the end of the night orderly, one at a time. Each one, a decision being made by a captain, receiving a new order from a Prefect Admiral who had done the math and found a different answer this time. Osei watched them go quiet. She did not breathe out. She did not slump. She did not feel the relief land, yet relief was something she allowed herself after, in private, when there was no one watching who needed her to be the thing that stood upright while the world decided. "Halverson," she said into the calm. "Still here," Halverson said. Her voice had something in it that wasn't quite steady. "How bad is it?" Osei looked at the damage display. Deck 4. Breached. The secondary corridor gone. The port shield array running at 30%. 3 damage reports that she had not read in full yet, because she had not had time to read them, and had not wanted to know until she could do something about what they contained. She read them now. She was quiet for a moment. "Halverson," she said. "Yeah. Come up when you can." The engine room was silent for a moment. Then, "Okay," Halverson said. Just that. The word carrying everything she had just understood. Outside, the Dravosi fleet began to move slowly, deliberately, with the particular careful motion of a formation that is repositioning rather than retreating, that is choosing to leave rather than being forced, maintaining the dignity of a decision made rather than a defeat absorbed. They would write it that way, probably. In their reports. Osei did not mind. She had never needed people to frame things the way they actually were. She needed the time's unbroken chorus times alive. One of those things was happening. The other 3 things, the damage reports, the corridors sealed, the spaces on the crew manifest where names no longer had duty rotations next to them. Those things sat in the room with her, and she did not look at them directly, and she did not look away from them either, because she had learned a long time ago that the cost of a promise was a real thing, a specific thing, and the only honest way to keep a promise was to know the cost fully and pay it anyway. She knew the cost. She had come anyway. The Dravosi fleet withdrew into the dark, and the Time's permanent reminder times held its position in the Cauldron Nebula, breathing hard, still standing. The docking umbilical between the Time's unbroken chorus times and the Time's permanent reminder times was a temporary thing, a pressurized tube, narrow and functional, that connected the 2 ships at their maintenance airlocks, while the Time's consideration, medical crew, worked inside the Time's chorus. It smelled of recycled air and metal, and the particular staleness of enclosed spaces that have been sealed for too long. The lighting was the flat, pale kind that exists in practical places, not beautiful ones. Suna walked through it alone. She had told Yurith to stay. She had told her senior staff to stay. She had made this a meeting between 2 commanders and no one else, because certain conversations required the specific quiet that only happens when witnesses are absent and neither party needs to perform for anyone. The human captain was waiting at the far end. Suna had seen humans before, in diplomatic contexts, in accord assemblies, in the briefing documents that reduced species to data columns and photographs. She had not been unprepared for the physical reality of one. And yet standing in the narrow umbilical corridor across from Captain Dara Osei, Suna found herself doing a recalculation that had nothing to do with appearance. Osei was not tall. She was not physically imposing. She was a middle-aged woman in a uniform that had been through better days, with tired eyes, and the specific quality of stillness that belongs to people who have run out of adrenaline and are running on something older and quieter. There was grease on her right sleeve that she either hadn't noticed or had stopped caring about. She looked like someone who had made an enormous decision a few days ago and had been paying for it steadily ever since. She looked like someone who would make the same decision again tomorrow. Suna had commanded for 80 years. She knew exactly what commanders looked like. She had never, in 80 years of knowing, seen one look quite like this. "Captain Osei," she said. "Admiral." Osei nodded. One of those human gestures, the head dip, acknowledgement without ceremony. "How's your crew?" The directness of it caught Suna for a half second. No preamble. No diplomatic opening. Just, "How's your crew?" "Stabilizing," she said. "The Time's consideration, team, is effective. We will have casualties, but fewer than we had projected at any point in the last 6 rotations." She paused. "And yours?" Osei looked at her for a moment. Something moved through her face, not dramatically, not in a way that broke her composure, but in the way that things move through a person when they are keeping themselves together, and the effort of it is real. "We'll be okay," she said. It was the shape of an answer, without quite being one. Suna had been a commander for 80 years. She knew exactly what times will be okay times sounded like when the speaker knew it wasn't entirely true. She did not push. She filed it. They walked together into the Times chorus. Nearest available briefing room. A small one. 2 chairs and a table. The kind of space used for minor administrative meetings rather than command decisions. It was the right size for what this was. Suna sat. Osei sat across from her and folded her hands on the table. Not in the formal Dravosi way. Not in any particular diplomatic posture. Just the way a person sits when they are done with everything theatrical and are ready to simply talk. I need to ask you something, Suna said. Go ahead. I have the signal log. Suna kept her voice even. She was good at keeping her voice even. She had practiced it for decades. I know what was sent. I know who received it. I know what they responded. She looked at the table between them, then back up. I have 43 data points, and they form a picture. You are the one point in the picture that the picture does not account for. I need to understand you. Osei was quiet for a moment. Then, what's the question? Why? Just that. The word alone, because it was the only one that mattered. Osei looked at her hands. Then at Suna. You sent a distress signal, she said. That's what those are for. Suna waited. That's the whole answer, Osei said. Gently. Not dismissively, she seemed to understand that it was an insufficient answer, and to be making peace with that insufficiency anyway. You sent a signal that said you were in trouble and needed help. I received it. I came. 39 civilizations received it, Suna said. They sent condolences. Condolences are for after, Osei said. You weren't after yet. 3 civilizations sent legal teams. That's not help. No, Suna said. It is not. She sat with that for a moment. The room was very quiet. Somewhere in the ship, the Times Consideration S medical personnel were moving through corridors, their equipment making the particular soft sounds of careful work. You were given a stand-down order, she said. I received a stand-down order, Osei said. There was a distinction there, quiet and specific and not elaborated on. Suna absorbed it. You risked your ship, your crew. Yes. For a species that you have no treaty with. No mutual defense clause. No bilateral agreement. No, we're in the same accord, Osei said. That means something. Or it's supposed to. A pause. I think it's supposed to. Suna looked at her for a long moment. Osei looked back, patient, not filling the silence. The door to the briefing room opened a few centimeters. Yereth. He had followed, despite being told not to, which Suna chose to address at a later time. He stood in the gap looking at Osei with the open, direct attention of someone who had been trying to understand something for several days and had decided that the direct approach was worth attempting. Were you not afraid? He asked. His voice was genuine, not challenging. The question of someone who truly needed the data. Osei looked at him. Of course, she said. He absorbed this. Then why? Because being afraid doesn't change what a distress signal means. She said it the way you say something that you have thought about long enough that it has stopped feeling complicated. I was afraid. I came. Both things were true at the same time. That's it. Yereth was still. Suna watched him absorbing it, watched the thing that was happening in him, the reorganization of something he had thought he understood, about the nature of risk and decision, and what beings do when they have a reason not to act, but act anyway. She knew the feeling. She was having a version of it herself. She dismissed Yereth with a look, and he retreated, pulling the door closed behind him. Osei was watching her. You're going to file a report, she said. Not a question. Many reports, Suna said. To the Accord, to my fleet command, to the Kethara Diplomatic Division. A pause. And one other. The Mutual Defense Committee. Yes, Suna looked at the table again. There was something that needed to be said, and she was locating the right form for it not because she was being diplomatic, but because she was being precise, because she wanted to say it in the way that was truest. The clause is inadequate, she said. It is designed around the assumption that species respond to need in the ways that they are legally obligated to respond. It does not account for... She stopped. For what? Osei asked. Suna looked at her. At the tired eyes and the grease on the sleeve, and the stillness of a person who had paid a real cost and was still sitting upright. At a captain who had received a stand-down order and parsed the difference between receiving and obeying, who had spent 2.5 rotations crossing a nebula on an engine running on spite, who had said times requesting times with a charged weapons array, and meant it, somehow, genuinely. For you, she said. It does not account for you. Osei said nothing. The compliment sat between them in the small room, and Osei let it sit rather than deflecting it, which told Suna something about the shape of the woman that she had learned to accept being seen. They parted at the umbilical. No ceremony. The times consideration times would stay for another 3 rotations to complete medical work. The times permanent reminder times needed dry dock, and Halverson needed to sleep. Practical things. The kind of things that come after. Suna walked back through the umbilical alone, and did not look back. She had never found looking back to be particularly useful. Yureth was at his console when she returned to the bridge. She could see from across the room that he was filing the incident report. She could tell from the way he was sitting, the careful attention of someone doing official work, and knowing that what they write will be read. She did not interfere. She went to her command chair and pulled up the Accord Committee comms channel and composed the message she had decided to compose in the umbilical corridor. The words already formed and clean, because she had been moving toward them for 6 rotations without knowing it. No preamble. No diplomatic softening. 2 sentences. Amend the clause. Specify the humans. She sent it. Across the bridge, Yureth finished his report. She did not ask him what he had written. It was his report, and he had earned the right to write it without her looking over his shoulder. Later, much later, after the times permanent reminder times had jumped away, and the Cauldron Nebula was just a smear of old light behind them, and the times unbroken chorus times was moving again under partial power, she asked him, casually. The way you ask about something when you already know it matters. He told her. In the field labeled times responding species, he had written, human. In the field labeled times notes, he had written 1 word. In Kethera, the word translated most closely as times as expected times, but it was a specific construction, a particular weight of the word times, expected times, that did not mean times, predicted times, or times anticipated. It meant times hoped for in the way that things are hoped for when you have stopped believing in them, and then they happen anyway. There was no clean translation for it in Trade Common. There did not need to be. Suna read it and nodded once, the way you nod when something has been said correctly, and went back to her damage reports, and did not explain to anyone why. For just a moment, her face had done something that 60 years of command had mostly trained it not to do. The times unbroken chorus times moved on through the dark. Behind it, in the direction of a human dry dock, several systems over, the times permanent reminder times moved through the same dark at a speed that Halverson had personally certified as safe, which meant it was probably fine, and everyone on board was too tired to argue the probably. The stars did what stars do. The signal logs sat in the Accord's records, all 43 responses, filed and indexed, and available to any species with access credentials, and somewhere in the middle of them, between 39 condolences and 3 legal referrals, 1 response that said nothing except the shape of a ship moving through the dark toward a signal that asked for help. That was all. That was enough.